Welcome back to Route Double. When he last left off, we were pretty much finally caught up to the present day in the before route. It is 5 a.m.
噂によると、ラボの警備員は自衛隊からの出向者で、ゴム弾使用のマシンガンを持ってるとか。
And we're getting closer and closer to Labo.
そういえば、浮田のおじさんも、ラボでは超法規的警備が認められているって言ってたな。
では、裏口から侵入する。大きな建物なら、入り口は複数ある可能性が高い。
Natsuhiko pondered that question for a while.
いや、真正面から行こう。もし警備員が内通者だったとしたら、こそこそ侵入したら逆に危ない。物陰とかに連れ込まれて始末される恐れがある。でも堂々と正面から入っていけば多くの人目に触れる。向こうも手出ししにくいはずだ。
しかし警備員が内通者じゃなければ捕まってしまうのは明白だけど。
問題ないさ。その警備員に母さんを連れてきてもらえば目的は果たせる。
True.
確かに。でもさ、それってちょっと賭けだよね。
I mean, we're pretty knee deep in the gamble game now, Mashiro.
なあ、賭けだ。だけど、おそらく一番安全だし、それに正義はこっちにある。正義の味方が裏口からこっそり侵入なんて、かっこ悪いじゃないか。
Mashiro stared in blank amazement at Natsuhiko's broad grin.
なんか夏彦、いつもとテンション違くない？
なんだ忘れたのか、マシロ。まあ、9年も経つからしょうがないけど。これが本来の僕だろ。
Mashiro's face lit up like sun at those words.
それだよ夏彦、その言葉を待ってたんだよ。
よし、それじゃあ2人とも正面から行くってことで問題ないな。
確かに最も合理的なアイディア。
The three of them smiled at each other as they gazed at the end of the long road. Summer triangle shone up high in the night sky as if to guide them, as if each of the three stars symbolized them. Yeah, this sort of thing happened before, didn't it? Natsuhiko abruptly recalled an event from his past. When he was young, Natsuhiko wanted to be a hero of justice, and in an attempt to get even the slightest bit closer to that goal, ran all around town with complete disregard to danger. Because of his actions, Yuri got hurt. That was when time stopped for me, wasn't it? He had always thought that it didn't matter to him. His frail sense of justice hurt others, that he was better off not doing anything. But it's not like that now. I swear I'll protect everyone and everything this time. Natsuhiko walked with that conviction in his heart. Eventually, as the stars faded away to give rise to the light of day, they found their destination just a short distance away. The building was surrounded by a tall fence with a giant gate. Kids climbed over the fence and infiltrated the premises.
着いたか。
Before their eyes was a gigantic building. Labo, the sixth Laboratory of Atomic and Biological Organization. A place where Natsuhiko and Yuri had suffered their permanent emotional scars.
静かだね。
まだテロは起きていないと思われる。
ああ。
Natsuhiko answered in a stiff voice. Damn it, I knew what would happen, but just looking at the building made him break out in goosebumps and a cold sweat. His fear from 9 years ago was alive and well. Put up with it. You can overcome this. Nobody thought that. A sharp voice rang out from a short distance away.
君たち、ここで何やってる？ここは立ち入り禁止だぞ。
They saw two men who seemed to be security guards rushing up to them from Labo. They were slinging what appeared to be machine guns off their shoulders. Mashiro stepped back in fear to see them. But Natsuhiko stepped up as if to cover for Mashiro and Sally as he answered the security guards.
待ってください。僕は天川美代子上級研究員の息子、天川夏彦です。
何？
The younger security guard looked dubious as Natsuhiko showed them his student ID card and continued.
緊急の件で母に会いに来ました。母を呼んでもらえませんか？
どういう要件だね？
家族の命の危機です。母には昨日から連絡がつかず、仕方なく直接やってきました。
Natsuhiko came up with a lie. As he did so, he desperately tried to use empathy. Just then, telepathy from Mashito came soaring into his head.
夏彦、この人たちの心が読めない。心開いてないよ。
Yeah, I can understand why. Regardless if the security guards were sleeper agents or not, it was only expected that they wouldn't open their hearts to some high school kids who suddenly appeared in a restricted area. They stared at the kids. Eventually, the younger security guard whispered to the older one.
天下を博士をお呼びしますか
Suddenly, raindrops started falling from the sky. Oh. Before they knew it, the sky became covered in clouds and it started to rain. Security guards looked up at the sky in frustration.
雨か。仕方ないな。エントランスまでは入れてあげよう。そこで天下を博士を待つんだ。
はい。
Kids secretly clenched their fists in glee at those words. Kids were taken to the entrance. The older security guard spoke up.
博士を呼んでくる。ここで少し待っていたまえ。
He disappeared behind an iron door further down the entrance. The younger security guard stayed behind with the kids.
僕らは連れてってはもらえないんですか？
外部の人間が入れるのはこのエントランスまでだ。この施設は至るところにセキュリティゲートが設けられていて、所定のカードを持っていないと入れない。
Interesting. The man glanced at the iron door. Beside the door was what appeared to be a card swiping slot.
天川博士はどこに？
地下フロアだろう。だが地上より地下はさらにセキュリティが高く、一般人の立ち入りは厳禁だ。場合によっては警告なしに発砲、捕獲することもある。分かったら、
In that order.
おとなしく待っているんだね。
In that order, shot and then apprehended. If security was that severe, then terrorists probably wouldn't be able to get in. We can't let our guards down. We don't know how the enemy plans to invade, after all. As Natsuhiko considered that possibility, he received telepathy from Mashiro.
時間を無駄にできないよね。今のうちに博士にテレパシーを送ってみようか。
Natsuhiko was taken aback, but he nodded at Mashiro.
了解。それじゃやってみるよ。
Yeah, I'll try too. Natsuhiko concentrated his mind. Imagine his mother's characteristic brain waveform in his head. She had told him herself once before. She was a Type 4, just like Salio. Something I need to tell Mom. Never needed this ability any more than I do now, so of course I'll be able to use telepathy. But when he made that conviction, Natsuhiko's 5 senses suddenly faded. He could feel his message leave his head as it emitted from his brain.
母さん、聞こえるか？僕だよ、夏彦だ。今僕らはラボの地上エントランスにいる。僕らが来た理由は昨日言っていた一件に関わってる。つまりテロのこと。Q がこの施設を狙っている可能性があるんだ。Q の目的はこの町を滅ぼすことだ。そのためにここの原子炉を狙ってる。しかもこの施設の中にはおそらく内通者がいる。浮田のおじさんか、あるいは他にも。どれだけ警備を厳しくしてもセキュリティが高くても内通者がいればテロは成功してしまうかもしれない。
It does make sense that there was a sleeper agent in Labo, with the sprinklers being disabled so the fires could spread amid the meltdown, or whatever the reactor going, whatever the actual reactor system running wild actually was. Since we know there's no nuclear reactor in Labo.
だから母さん、今すぐ施設内の全員を外に出して誰も中に入れないようにしてくれ。
Which makes me wonder if there isn't actually a nuclear reactor in Labo. Was this all a big honeypot operation? From the ending of After, it felt like Miyoko, to some degree, knew what was going on down at the bottom floors.
無茶を言っているのは分かってる。だけどそれしか方法がないんだ。
Once he had focused that far, his five senses had returned. Alright. Natsuhiko was confident he successfully invoked telepathy. Right after that, he received telepathy from Mashiro.
ねえ夏彦、テレパシーを送ったけど天下博士に伝わってる感じがしないよ。
え？それってわかるのか？
Security guard looked at Natsuhiko suspiciously after he inadvertently spoke out loud.
ん？何がだね？
あ、いや、なんでもありません。
As Natsuhiko panicked to smooth things over, Mashiro continued with telepathy.
慣れてくるとね、エンパシーの応用で送信確認もできるの。
Oh.
だけど、なんか変。全く反応がない。
What? Did something happen to Mom? Natsuhiko was hit by an unpleasant premonition as he looked towards the entrance. And then, suddenly, memories from 9 years ago came back into his mind. It was July 7th, 2021. Oh boy. Memory of when he and Yuri had sneaked into this facility. The time security was lax. They had stowed away on a transport truck and hid behind a security guard to get into the entrance. All staff seemed to be underground as there was no human presence in the entrance.
はあ、ここがラボか。
Natsuhiko looked around and beside him, Yuri whispered.
ねえ、光、もっとコソコソした方がいいよ。
なんだよユーリ。ユーリだって賛成しただろ。いつもお仕事ばっかりさせられて大変そうな母さんを助けてあげようってさ。
分かってるけど。
That was the reason Natsuhiko and Yuri had sneaked into Labo. At the time, Dr. Tenkawa was already a core member of the Labo research team and would always work late into the night. In Natsuhiko's eyes, she looked like she was being forced to work.
これは母さんを助けるための正義の作戦なんだ。もっと堂々としてた方がいいって。
でも見つかったら怒られちゃうよ。
なんだ怖がりだな。ほら、手つないであげるから行くぞ。
Natsuhiko gripped Yuri's hand and walked farther inside.
母さんに聞いたんだ。母さん、
Oh,
偉い博士しか入れないエリアなんだって。
basement of Area 5.
じゃあまずは地下に行く階段を探さなくちゃね。
あの扉の奥だよきっと。行こうユーリ。
Back then, their path was blockaded by an iron door as well.
あれ？開かない。
どうすれば開くのかな。
How would they open it? Why were they able to? Why were they able to go to the basement back then? As soon as Natsuhiko pondered that detail, an intense shock suddenly ran through his head, interrupting his thoughts.
No.
He heard the security guard's dubious voice coming from far away. Natsuhiko leaned against a wall, unable to stand the immense pain.
夏彦、
どうしたの？気分でも悪いの？
頭が。
Felt as if something were clamping down on his head. It happened when he tried to remember what happened 9 years ago. Why? Why does my head hurt so much? No, I don't care. I need to remember. Something's off here, isn't it? Even if the security system has changed from how it was in the past, the structure of the facility itself wouldn't change too, would it? Why were we able to go to the basement? Back then, neither Natsuhiko nor Yuri had a security card. And yet when they messed around with the card slot in an attempt to open the door... That's right. Not mistaken, back then there was an alarm. Tried to remember, another headache struck. Damn. Natsuhiko staggered, unable to bear it. At that moment, he heard a tremendous roar beneath his feet. 619. Natsuhiko fell to the ground as if a rug had been pulled from under him. He heard something shatter by his wrist. The roaring sounds kept coming. Masha screamed from beside him. They could feel tremors coming through from the floor.
なんだ今の音は
Security guard muttered in shock. The kids were well aware of what it was.
爆弾、それも複数。夏彦、これって。
Natsuhiko gritted his teeth at those words.
分かってる。
He endured the pain to stand up and wring words out of his lungs.
僕らは間に合わなかったんだ。
His words were drowned out by the shrill shriek of an alarm.
ただいま地下1階第1エリアで激しい振動を感知しました。ただいま地下2階第3エリアで激しい振動を感知しました。ただいま地下1階第2エリアで火災が発生しました。ただいま地下2階第2エリアで激しい振動を感知しました。
The automatic disaster prevention system rang out a flurry of warning broadcasts. Mechanical, robotic voice, an unending stream of fragmentary information. Regardless, everyone could tell that an unprecedented crisis was upon this facility. It's the same as 9 years ago. The same alarm, these same warnings rang out back then, too. The moment Natsuhiko made that realization, another memory came back.
ただいま地下1階第2エリアで火災が発生しました。ただいま地下2階第3エリアで火災が発生しました。ただいま地下1階第5エリアで火災が発生しました。
Natsuhiko and Yuri heard those warnings as they stood in front of the iron door.
なんだ何が起こったんだ
火事だよ。この下で火事が起きてる。
火事
As Natsuhiko yelled, the automatic announcement continued.
施設内のセキュリティを避難モードに移行。N エリアを除く全ゲートを開放します。職員の皆様は落ち着いて地上へ避難してください。
That explains that. So that's it. Back then it was just a fire alarm, but the situation was similar. Once Natsuhiko made the connection, he heard the same announcement as he did 9 years ago.
施設内のセキュリティを避難モードに移行。N エリアを除く全ゲートを開放します。職員の皆様は落ち着いて地上へ避難してください。
At that same time, the iron door opened up further down the entrance. In the same way, the iron door opened up 9 years ago.
火事って母さんが地下にいるのに
どうしよう、光。
助けに行かなきゃ。ユーリはここで待ってろ。
Natsuhiko yelled that command as he rushed through to the other side of the door.
まずい。行かなきゃまずい。
Natsuhiko tried to run off, but the security guard grabbed his arm.
ちょっと待って君まずいってどういうことだ
警備員さん、僕らに構ってる場合じゃありません。
何
これはテロです。すぐに警察と消防を呼んでください。
テロだってまさか
Why else would everything be exploding, guard? Natsuhiko shook off the confused security guard's arm and dashed off. Terrorists had the sleeper agent cause a commotion in the facility so that the gates would open. This rate is just a repeat of what happened 9 years ago. No, something far worse.
待って夏彦、どこ行くの？
地下だ。
地下って今爆発が。
二人はついてくるな。ここから絶対動くな。
Saying just that much, Natsuhiko plunged toward the iron door. He He searched for a nearby staircase and ran down. As he descended the staircase, he heard the screams of Labo staff members off in the distance. The basement floors were already engulfed in dreadful chaos. Nobody seemed to know what was going on. Where are the terrorists? Where did they set the bombs? He looked around with that in mind. He noticed Mashino and Sally right beside him.
何やってるんだ。なんでついてきたんだ。
そりゃこっちのセリフだよ。一人でどこに行くのさ。単独行動は危険。
そんなことは分かってるよ。でも。
As soon as Natsuhiko began to speak, another memory of the past came to him. It was the same back then. Yuri had followed him even though he had told her to wait for him.
ユーリ、来ちゃダメだよ。火事が起きてるんだぞ。
私だって博士助けたいの。ヒコリン博士が危ない目に遭ってるのに一人で待ってるの嫌だもん。
Yuri sounded somehow different from usual. That was the first time he had heard such a powerful voice from her. So the Natsuhiko of 9 years ago
分かった。
ended up answering that way.
じゃあ一緒に行こう。二人で母さんを助けよう。
Why is everything repeating itself? Didn't seem like a mere coincidence, but something tinged with fate. What happened after he went down 9 years ago? When he tried to remember, he was struck by another intense headache.
夏彦、また頭痛？大丈夫夏彦、しっかりして。
The headache made him nauseous. Each time he tried to invoke his memory, he was struck by this pain. Damn it. Is my desire to remember not to remember really that bad? It should be obvious to me what happened after that, shouldn't it? He got caught in the fire with Yuri and almost died. There's no way I can yield to that fear. But when that thought crossed his mind, he heard another explosion from nearby. Natsuhiko promptly covered Mashino and Salu. 1 second later, a blazing wind shot by. The kids were blown away.
N エリアの数値増幅を確認。緊急停止システムを始動しました。N エリアおよび制御室の職員も全員直ちに地上へ避難してください。
大丈夫か、二人とも。
They slowly got up after having fallen on top of each other.
大丈夫。
The two groaned, but they appeared to be uninjured. Thank goodness. Though relieved, Natsuhiko searched for the origin of the explosion. The explosion sounded like it came from the direction of the staircase they just descended.
まさか。
Natsuhiko gasped and dashed for the staircase. But
くそ。
what was waiting for them was the collapsed ruins of a staircase.
階段が壊されたの？誰もいなかったのに、なぜ？
畜生、全部奴らの仕業だ。
It was the very same trick they used at the PRC. The sleeper agent carried in a time bomb and set it in the facility. Probably not just one bomb, but several. The brave decision. They destroyed the exit. We're trapped in the basement.
まさかここまでの状況になるなんて。どうするの、夏彦
Natsuhiko gritted his teeth and looked at his watch. He wanted to know just how much time they had left. But his watch had broken before he realized it. Apparently it had slammed onto the floor when the first explosion knocked him over. Watch's date had stopped at 9:16, its hands at 6:19. Time he'd likely never forget for the rest of his life. Only we had gotten here just a little bit sooner. Even if they were late, they were still meeting at their arrival. Now that would be something if we had the same gimmick as we had in After, where there are certain events that wasted time on the final day, which could cause you to arrive late and essentially fall into this loop. Natsuhiko tried to walk off unsteadily, but Mashiro grabbed his hand.
奴らを探しに。
まさか夏彦。
奴らの計画を阻止するんだ。今からでも僕にできることを。
それはダメ。夏彦、頭を冷やして。
どうして？真城だって僕がここに来ることには同意してくれたじゃないか。
さっきまでとは状況が違うじゃない。もう遅いんだよ。
遅くない。きっとまだ間に合う。それにどこに逃げても同じだ。だったら。
The moment those words left his lips, a sharp pain ran through his cheek. Mashiro had slapped him.
失いたいの。
Those words gouged out Natsuhiko's heart. But then another roar rang out.
爆発。今度はどこで？お願い夏彦、早く逃げよう。
Mashiro's pleading voice caused Natsuhiko's heart to waver. The current situation was progressing as if it were following the incident 9 years ago to a T. Natsuhiko didn't want to repeat the same mistakes he made that time. He didn't want any of the people precious to him to suffer again. Holding those convictions in his heart, he forced himself to speak.
分かった。まずは出口を探そう。
Mashiro and Sally's faces relaxed in relief at those words.
僕が先頭に立つ。サリは一番後ろについてくれ。テロリストに出くわすことを想定しておこう。
了解。
Three of them ran off with tense looks in their faces. As they ran, Natsuhiko glanced at his broken watch. At the only present he ever received from his mother. Something I need to do before I escape. His mother was likely still inside the facility. We were too late to stop the terrorist attack, but at the very least I want to ensure an escape route for Mashiro, Salyu, and his mother. That was Natsuhiko's earnest wish.
別の階段を探そう。どこかに無事な階段があるはずだ。
施設内の構造はわかる？
いや、さすがに細かく覚えては。
なら先に調べるべき。闇雲に逃げるのは危険。
And with that, Salyu dashed into a nearby room. It was a laboratory devoid of any people. Salyu looked for a computer that was left on and connected Alice to it.
サリュー、何をしてるんだ？
今この施設内の地図を検索する。あるかどうかわからないけど。アリス、以下命令。全ネットワークからファイル名検索。検索優先度項。地図、マップ、MAP。パスワード付きのファイルおよびフォルダはパスワードを照合の後アクセス。当該ファイルはすべてダウンロード。以上命令。
Hacker Ferret! Alice's back opened, exposing her screen. The screen displayed a list of all the files she had downloaded. Sally skimmed through them with her fingertip. Right after Mashiro prayed for her to find the map, Sally's eyes widened.
あった。多分これ。
The kids peeked at the screen to see a hexagonal map.
ああ、間違いないな。
Just like the ground levels, the basement floors were also hexagonal, apparently divided into 6 areas. Sally pointed at the top of the map.
エントランスの位置から察するに、私たちの現在地はこの第一エリア外周と地下1階。先ほど崩れたのは外周塔の非常階段だと思う。隣の内周塔にも非常階段があるみたいだね。
Just as Mashiro had said, each area apparently had an emergency staircase and an elevator.
よし、じゃあまずはそこに行こう。
The kids nodded at each other and ran out of the room. Crossed through the connecting passageway and headed to the inner ring. On right of the passageway, there was what appeared to be one of those security gates that the security guard had mentioned, but it was left wide open. Once they reached the inner ring... Fire! Was engulfed in fire.
なんでこんなに早く火災が。
爆発の影響で。いや、いくらなんでも早すぎる。燃焼剤入りの爆弾もあるのかもしれない。まさか施設内の人たちを逃がさないようにしているの？
ここは危険だ。別の道を探そう。
Natsuhiko grabbed the girl's hand and retreated to the passageway. The escape routes are quickly crumbling down one by one.
マシロ、サリュ、地図にはエレベーターも載っていた。一応使えるか試してみてくれ。
夏彦は？
僕は隣の第2エリアに続く道が無事か確認してくる。
了解。気をつけて。
Natsuhiko split from the girls for the time being. First, we need to ensure an escape route. If there's a safe emergency staircase, we can get them out through there. That thought in mind, Natsuhiko walked into the connecting passageway to Area 2. Then he doubted his eyes. There she stood. The girl who was supposed to be waiting for them at home, Yuri.
Yuri?
Natsuhiko's voice cracked as it escaped from his mouth. He couldn't believe what his eyes were telling him. Thought she wasn't able to take a single step out from the house. Natsuhiko gazed at her in shock and... She muttered sadly.
Yuri こそどうしてここに？家から出られたのか？
Right after Natsuhiko asked that question, for some reason, his memories of the last few days came rushing back into his mind. Visions of the events of September 10th up until today spun rapidly through his mind like the illustrations on a revolving lantern. Then disappeared. What? Natsuhiko had no idea what happened. We just speedrun previous few hours of this route. Yuri gazed at him in his confusion. Her expression was somehow sad, yet she smiled as if a weight had been taken off her shoulders. What does that even mean? Something clearly strange about that exchange. Is this that ability beyond empathy that Yuri was talking about? That Yuri probing our memories partly caused us to relive our memories too? It's almost as if Yuri had read Natsuhiko's mind. Same sort of thing happened a few days before, too. Don't tell me Yuri's actually... Before he could finish that thought, a flash flickered beside them.
Yuri!
Natsuhiko swiftly lunged at Yuri, and not a second later, a shockwave struck them. Natsuhiko and Yuri were blown away. A split second before they hit the ground, a vision of that fateful morning rose up in the back of his mind. That morning, 6 days ago, September 10th, 2030. His memory of that day back when everything was still peaceful. What? 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 Those memories led to the end of September 10th. Yuri looked at Natsuhiko and spoke.
これからヒコリンの身にはいろんな出来事が起こると思う。楽しいことも辛いことも 勇気なくしては乗り越えられないことも。だけどきっとそのどれもが避けちゃいけないことなんだよ。
As he recalled those memories, Natsuhiko passed out. And thus began that curious cyclic recursion of reminiscence and reality. After a vivid recollection of the events of September 10th, Natsuhiko woke up. Natsuhiko told Mashiro and Sally of how he had met up with Yuri.
こうなったらユーリも連れて4人で脱出しよう。サリュー、第一エリアのエレベーターは使えそうだったか？
残念ながら止まっていた。どうやらエレベーターは普通の模様。
地上に出るには無事な非常階段を探すしかないよ。
じゃあ行こう。第2エリアはこの先だ。
Are we gonna relive all of our Labo excursion up to this point? Natsuhiko ran off with the girls. Their path was blocked by a security gate. In front of the closed gate, Natsuhiko recalled the event of the 11. Really? Alright, this is our summary then.
PC は使い方を間違えたら危険だって思ったよ。
何言ってんの？昔夏彦が言ってたことを真似してるだけだよ。
私はあなたを守るためにここへ来たというのに。
At the end of that reminiscence, Natsuhiko returned to reality once more. They pried the gate open and dashed into Area 2 where they came across the men in protection suits. For a second they had thought that the rescue squad had come to save them. Sally flung the men to the ground.
サリュー、どうして？
夏彦真白、あなたたちは甘い。心を許すのが早すぎる。なぜそうやってすぐに人を信じようとするの？
For a moment, Natsuhiko had no idea what was happening, but then he recalled what happened on the 12th. This is gonna be fun to edit.
見えるものが全てではないし、見えるもの全てが本物とは限らないよ。私の見ている世界と夏彦の見ている世界が実は全然違うかもしれないってことじゃない？
今日はみんな楽しそうにしているように見えた。夏彦も楽しかった。
As he saw those memories, Natsuhiko understood Sally's intention. Those were memories of the day they made friends with Sally, and she wouldn't knock out rescue squad members without a good reason. In other words, the men inside those protection suits were the terrorists they were looking for. The terrorist slowly rose to his feet as he spoke. As the others in the group stiffened, Sally yelled.
夏彦真白、逃げて。私がここでこいつを倒す。一人はもう気絶しているから1対1ならなんとかなる。夏彦たちはその間に出口を探して。
Natsuhiko hesitated, but what Sally said was right.
サリュー、約束だぞ。必ず一緒に脱出しよう。出口探して待ってるからな。
Natsuhiko turned and fled with Yuri and Mashiro. They slipped through the passageway and headed to the emergency staircase in Area 3's inner ring. Even the once safe staircase was now blown up and rendered unusable. They couldn't find an exit should they rejoin with Sally and help her fight the terrorists. Once that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, Yuri raised her voice.
ダメ、ヒコリ、やるべきことを思い出して。ヒコリの役目は何？先にすることがあるでしょ。あの日にも言ったはずだよ。
When she told him that, he recalled the events of the 13th.
遅いよ、夏彦。もう上場できてるよ。あなたたちの意志も、思考も、思いも、記憶も。
Was this the day that
概念なんかじゃないの。
was this the day that frustrated the hell out of me?
コミュニケーターをおとなしくこの街で不意
ねえ、きっとこのことに気づいてるのは私たちだけど。
僕らにその阻止なんてできるわけないじゃないか。
もう夏彦には頼んだよ。じゃあね。
Believe in our friends. That was the lesson. The reminiscence taught Natsuhiko what it was that he should do right now. Natsuhiko didn't believe Marshall when she first talked about the terrorist plot. The current situation was the result of his disbelief. What I need to do first is get Marshall and the others out of here. That's a big leap. This situation is the result of Natsuhiko not initially believing Mashiro. Is there any way at all to climb this thing? If I can at least get Mashiro and the others out, then. At that moment, a small figure appeared on the top of the stairs.
サリュー。
ごめん、不覚を取った。
Sally was shot and wounded by the terrorists. There were at least 3 of them. They had incredible physiques and apparently even a gun. Looking to his run, Dr. Tenkawa already managed to escape. As Sally reassured them, Natsuhiko called out to her.
じゃあサリュー、降りてきてくれ。一緒に逃げよう。
いや、この腕じゃここは降りられない。夏彦たちが上がってくるのも難しいと思う。だから別々に逃げよう。
そんな、サリは一人で大丈夫なの？
大丈夫。でも根拠を話している時間はない。だから PC で。
When she said that, Natsuhiko used empathy right away. And soon enough, Sally's mental voice echoed in Natsuhiko's head. Oh! Her clear, high-speed thought process allowed her to convey everything to them. In a matter of mere moments.
どうやら奴らはもうなりふり構っていない。次に遭遇したら即座に撃たれると思う。
See, my thought's that if Watase was a terrorist, then Dojima and Hiyama were also terrorists. Which would be the 3-man gang, who were rescue squad, folks.
この状況下で逃げられる可能性は不明。それでも私は必ず逃げ延びてみせる。夏彦たちとこれからも一緒に生きていきたいから。こんなのは根拠とは言わない。
Okay, to the credit of replaying all these scenes that we've seen already, this is a nice touch, because originally I thought that Sally was using BC. But with the later revelation that Natsuhiko can do empathy too, this makes a lot of sense. This makes a lot more sense.
だけどそう思うと強い意志が湧いてくる。腕の痛みも忘れられる。ようやく人生が面白くなってきたのに、こんなところで終わりたくない。この6日間本当に楽しかったから。夏彦、私の料理を褒めてくれてありがとう。初めての料理だった。真白、あだ名をつけてくれてありがとう。とても気に入っていた。ユーリ、今となっては遅いけど、あなたをもっと知りたかった。これが私の本当の気持ち。あなたたちに伝えたかったこと。
Natsuhiko felt Sally conveying her emotions alongside her thoughts. Feelings beyond words. As if in response, Natsuhiko's mind recalled the days he had spent with Salio. Her facial expression looked robotic when they first met. How lonely she looked as she sat by herself in the classroom on the day she transferred in. How she suddenly appeared in his house. How they had gone shopping for clothes for her. And how hearing about Alice changed his perspective on her. And when they went searching for Mashiro, they got into a small disagreement and he learned about her condition. How she had thrown down the PRC security guard. How they had cooked and eaten together. How he heard about her past in the karaoke box. And how they ran around town searching for terrorists together. Those were no longer any ordinary memories. They were the new cherished memories he shared with her. Sally's feelings echoed in his mind.
ありがとう、夏彦。何もなかった私にも大切な記憶ができた。私の過去が暗い灰色に塗られていたとしても、この6日間は彩りに満ちていた。これからももっとたくさん思い出を作りたい。
This feels like a character epilogue. Like the 3 and after.
だから私は絶対死なない。もし叶うならばまたあの家で食事をしよう。その時はきっと私ももっと美味しい料理を。
She got that far with her thoughts before stopping with a faint smile.
サリュ
Something warm filled Natsuhiko's chest. Yuri and Mashiro murmured in trembling voices.
サリュちゃん、私もだよ、サリュ。
Mashiro and perhaps Yuri seemed to have read Salyu's mind. She was really that thankful for such a small gesture. Salyu's feelings were so innocent that he didn't want to part with her. But nevertheless, Natsuhiko forced himself to smile as he called out to her.
分かった。この2人のことは僕に任せろ。もう一度約束だ。全員生きて外で会おう。
必ず。
With that, Salyu disappeared.
行こう、2人とも。サリュとの約束を守るためにも。
Mashiro and Yuri nodded meekly, and then they ran once again. Broadcast had said that the staircases in Area 5 and 6 were safe. Once they left Area 3 and approached Area 4's outer ring, they found it wreathed in flames. Somehow managed to pass through and reach the next connecting passageway, but... more fire! There was yet another fire blocking their way. Terrorists were chasing from behind. There was no escape. They fell into despair. Visions of the 14th suddenly flickered before Natsuhiko's eyes. Those were the memories of the day Natsuhiko's daily life collapsed. That was the day there was a bomb threat at school. They heard about Q. They trespassed into the PRC. They got chased by the security department. Finally, that was the day he swore to protect the town with Mashiro and Salyu. He swore to protect it, even if it meant having to be away from Yuri. But in the end, Yuri still got dragged into the affair. He was now standing in front of Natsuhiko. That day inspired Natsuhiko, both through the regret he had for getting the girls involved and through the courage those girls had given him. Those words fanned the fire burning in Natsuhiko's heart. That's right, I need to be stronger. Else I have no hope of overcoming the past. Natsuhiko grabbed Mashiro by the hand.
諦めるな。行くぞ、マシロ。
どこに？
別の道を使うんだ。第5エリアに続く道はここだけじゃない。
Inspired by the memory of that long day, Natsuhiko took Yuri and Mashito and ran. He slipped once again through the roaring flames enveloping Area 4. Took an alternate route to Area 5. As soon as they set foot there, a warning rang out. With that automated broadcast, the security gates shut down.
どういうこと？
僕らはこの塔に閉じ込められちまったんだ。
There appeared to be no exits anywhere. In a daze, Natsuhiko's mind suddenly recalled his memories of the 15.
覚悟はいい。私はできたよ。
仕事が全て終わるまでいっそ会わない方が。
その後、正しいやり方を知らずに PC を使っていると、そのコミュニケーターはやがて心が壊れて怪物になってしまう。
あなたたちコミュニケーターを守るために国家が作り上げた砦なの？
事件はまだ終わってない。
事故の数自体が不自然なくらい増えてる気がするんだよね。
この子たちまで巻き込むわけにはいかない。
正義反応。行き過ぎると身を滅ぼす。ひとまず眠っていてもらう。
Those were memories of the day Natsuhiko found the truth and truly began to face his past. The day Enna told them about the true history of their country and the details of the organization known as Q. The day they caught the culprit behind the PRC bombing and learned that Leba was the next target. And finally, the day they finally confronted the terrorists but were defeated. Resentment, anger, and bitterness he felt that day rose once again in his heart. That's right, that was only a few hours ago, wasn't it? Regret I felt back then brought me here. That thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind. Yuri softly whispered beside him.
ヒコリン、思い出したでしょ。たくさんの障害を超えて、ヒコリンはここにやってきた。ヒコリンは過去を乗り越えられる力を手に入れたんだよ。これから何が起ころうと、ヒコリンの心は折れない。
Those words fortified Natsuhiko's mind even further.
マシロ、まだ諦めちゃダメだ。脱出の道はきっとある。
でもゲートが開かないんじゃどこにも。
いや、セキュリティカードを探すんだ。カードさえあれば第6エリアに行ける。
Right after the alarm went off, the whole facility went into a mass panic. Wouldn't be strange if a staff member had forgotten their card somewhere. I swear I'll find a card and get these two girls right out of here if it's the last thing I do. Natsuhiko held that conviction and began to search for a security card. And thus, as reminiscence and reality converged, Natsuhiko progressed bit by bit. In the room he arrived in, Natsuhiko discovered a certain something.
なんで僕の写真が。
He also found a file labeled with the year 2021. Without thinking, he took it down and started turning through it. The answer just might be in here. As soon as that thought crossed his mind, he felt someone's presence. He looked up in shock to find Yuri standing by that room's entrance.
ユリ、君はこのことを知っていて、僕をこの部屋に入れたのか。
私がヒコリンを？違うよ。ヒコリンが自分でこの部屋を選んだんだよ。9年前もこの部屋に来たでしょ。火と煙に追われて。あの時カードは見つけられなかったね。だけど今回は必ずそれを探してマシロンと一緒に逃げて。
真っ白とって有利はどうするんだ。
私は一緒に行けないの。
どうして。
ヒコリンもそろそろ気づいているんじゃない？ねえヒコリン、今日見聞きしたことを思い出して。そこに真実はあるから。
This was not that long ago. The moment Yuri said that, Natsuko realized something. Huh? She already said that just now. Oh, okay. Indeed, Natsuko had recalled everything that happened up until that very moment. He had recalled all his memories this morning, from waking up in the ruined factory to entering this very room. Oh, we're back. At the end of his long reminiscence, time had caught up with reality. At the same time, intense anxiety rolled up from within him. What is this? It wasn't because he had kept recalling things. That was indeed strange, and he didn't know why it was happening. There was something far stranger. His memories of just a few hours ago, something felt bizarrely out of place. Earlier, when Yuri said the truth lies in those observations, it sent intense tremors in Natsuhiko's mind. Strange. Something strange. His headache got even worse. It gave him the feeling that he mustn't think any further about the matter. However, Natsuhiko's gaze fell onto the file in his hands. A file labeled 2021 that was in his mother's care. He flipped through the chronologically organized documents. Eventually, one page in particular caught Natsuhiko's eye. The paper was dated July 7th, 2021. The day Natsuhiko and Yuri got caught in an accident. The page contained clippings of newspaper articles. Fire at nuclear research facility, July 7th, 2021. Today at 1 p.m., a fire broke out at Rokume City's nuclear research facility. The 6th label. Not reading the whole name. Fuck it. 15 staff members and children were hospitalized for burns and carbon monoxide poisoning. In addition, there was one casualty. The name of the deceased was Koki Sumida, 36, staff member at the facility. Sumida suffered full-body burns and died shortly after he was rescued and taken outside the facility. The disaster developed to the point where 2 other children were rendered unconscious and are in critical condition. The facility announced that their small nuclear reactor intended for research was in use. The effects of the fire posed no danger of causing radiation leakage. The cause of the fire is unknown, but police officials are investigating the possibility of arson. Natsuko's heart throbbed in pain as he finished reading the article. He had a terribly bad feeling about the next document, but he flipped the page. Next was what appeared to be an internal Labo document concerning the incident. Labo Fire Incident, July 10th, 2021. All relevant parties are most likely already aware of the fire that occurred in this facility 3 days ago, July 7th. Although the worst possible outcome was averted at the last moment, there were inadequacies found in multiple security systems. This document contains a compilation of the problems hinted at by the incident. The cause of the fire lies in the deranged actions of Senior Fellow S. S had been appointed as an administrator of Area 0 on April 12th. As a result, he had quite a great number of opportunities to come into contact with the research results in Area 0. And about 3 months later, S committed his crime. Took the power generator gasoline stored in Area 0, scattered it at 6 points throughout Labo. He used timed lighters to set them all on fire and intentionally caused the WX particle amplifier to go haywire at the same time. He also unlocked the gates to Area N and Area 0. Oh. He's believed to have committed the arson in order to escape with certain research results during the fire. Though this is nothing more than a guess, seeing how S is now dead. The possibility of this is quite high. Furthermore, these research results shall be designated as N amongst all senior fellows to conceal the relevant details. There's Area N, which we know about, which is where the WX particle amplifier is. And there's Area 0, which is still... It seems beyond N? Like, there's still that area that Watase found at the beginning of the game. Like an underground garden of sorts with dead researchers. I wonder if that's Area 0. Also, while this is not directly related to the incident, 2 children infiltrated the facility on the day of the incident at a most unfortunate time. It is simply unacceptable for children to have found and exploited a hole in our security. This is quite frankly the epitome of carelessness for our security system, and 2 lives were lost as a result. Strengthening the Area 0 security alone doesn't guarantee us any safety whatsoever. There's an urgent need to have the specifications of a case end reviewed and for the security systems to be enhanced. Otherwise, we may foresee yet another repeat of this tragedy. 2 lives were lost. Sao Kawada. The more he continued reading, the more Natsuhiko's heart pounded like an alarm bell. The document was littered with initialisms and cryptic terminology, but there was one thing he could understand clearly. The cause of the incident that Natsuhiko and Yuri had encountered was arson committed by a facility staff member. The incident 9 years ago and the incident today were no accidents. So is that why there's been so many coincidences? There was a far more important detail in the document. 2 lives were lost as a result. Natsuhiko felt an absurd anxiety over those words. One of the ones who died 9 years ago was the arsonist, Senior Fellow S. Then who was the other life lost? Yuri. Can't be. Can't be. Voices echoed inside his head, telling him, "Stop! Don't read anymore." An unbearable pain ran through his head. But Natsuhiko shook it off. Turned the page. Victim count rises for nuclear research facility fire. July 9th. Out of the 15 staff members and children hospitalized due to the fire in Rokame City's nuclear research facility, the 6th Labo. Another casualty was confirmed. The deceased child was Yuri Kotono, 8. At the time of the incident, Yuri was sent to a city hospital unconscious and in critical condition. She was put under intensive care but never regained consciousness. She passed away in the early hours of the morning. Yuri's cause of death was multiple organ failure due to carbon monoxide poisoning. According to both the facility and the hospital, her illness was not due to radiation exposure. The deceased child was Yuri Kotono. Moan squeezed out from the bottom of his throat. This is the truth that's been lurking over this whole route so far. A single line from the article jumped out and bored its way forcefully into his eyes. The deceased child was Yuri Kotono. His mind went blank at those words. His body trembled. Couldn't think, couldn't understand. Soon enough, in the depths of what that white darkness, memories of 9 years ago, rushing back to Natsuhiko.
Yuri, 大丈夫?
Yuri answered with painful breaths. That day, Natsuhiko and Yuri had trespassed all the way to B1, Area 5. Once they got there, the path was a sea of fire. Flames danced about everywhere, shrouding the facility in smoke. It didn't seem to have very long before they'd be surrounded by fire. What do we do? At this rate, Yuri's gonna... They searched everywhere in Area 5, but they could not find Natsuhiko's mother. Perhaps she had already escaped without waiting for them. In that case, we have to hurry and get out of here. The moment that thought crossed Natsuhiko's mind, an ominous siren suddenly bellowed. A loud alarm bellowed, much different from the siren of the fire alarm. An automatic broadcast voice followed. Broadcast said nothing more before cutting out. Natsuhiko looked toward the connecting passageway in shock. The security gate in their path shut with a roar. Natsuko rushed over to the gate and tried opening it. But no matter how much strength he used, no matter how much he pressed the open button, the gate wouldn't budge one bit. With a worried look on her face, Yuri gripped Natsuko's hand tight. Natsuko answered tearfully.
なんでかわからないけど、扉がまた開かなくなっちゃった。それってならないってこと？大丈夫だよ。今こんなの開けてやるから。
Natsuko fired himself up and struck the door with all his might. As he did, smoke billowed up from somewhere and flooded the surrounding air. Natsuko panicked as he heard Yuri's coughing. No matter how many times he pounded on the door, it wouldn't open. As he screamed with his wavering voice, Natsuko pounded recklessly on the gate. Tears welled up in Natsuko's eyes, tears of fear, tears of pain from slamming the gate with his fists. Eventually, Yuri's coughing started to grow weak.
Yuri?
When he turned around, Yuri had sunk to the floor. If we stay here, Yuri's gonna die. Natsuko carried Yuri's body and slowly started to walk. His head hurt terribly, perhaps due to smoke inhalation. He was sick to his stomach and his skin felt numb. Even so, he desperately searched for a route to survival. He couldn't find an exit anywhere. Their sole path to escape, the emergency staircase, was engulfed in flames, preventing any possible approach. He tumbled into a nearby room, chased by the smoke. He desperately shut the door, but the smoke got in through the gaps. Yuri coughed within Natsuko's arms. Her powerless voice tore at Natsuko's heart. There was nowhere to run. The fire intensified and the smoke chased them everywhere. The small room, too, would eventually be engulfed in flames. Even as a young child, Natsuko knew that death was near. He sobbed words of regret.
ごめん、ユーリ。僕がユーリを連れてきたせいで。母さんを助けるなんてかっこいいこと言っておいて。だけどできなくて。それどころかユーリをこんな目に。ごめん。本当にごめん。
Before he knew it, tears were dripping out of his eyes. His body withered in helplessness, and his heart tore apart with regret. Then, Yuri's hand touched Natsuko's cheek. As she spoke, she smiled. A smile with but a fraction of the brightness of a sixth magnitude star.
Yuri.
Natsuko embraced Yuri. Her body was powerless. He was afraid she'd collapse if he let go. The smoke snatched away Natsuko's strength as well, and it became difficult for him to support her. His consciousness threatened to fade away, but even so, he can't give up. To find a way to save Yuri. Natsuko thought desperately. He searched around the room for a way to escape. Atop the desk, he caught sight of a digital photo frame. There's a picture of Natsuhiko and his mother. This is Mom's room. That tiniest bit of information sparked hope in Natsuhiko's heart. In his arms, Yuri's face was pale, her eyes closed. Remember the days he had spent with her. They had run around in the park, played at home, gone on tests in courage, and finally, they had practiced telepathy together. Telepathy. We can use telepathy to tell someone we're here. And someone will come save us. Natsuhiko focused. Keened all his mind to the best of his ability. Focused on a distress signal. To survive, to save Yuri. Eventually all the surrounding sound faded into the distance. His mental voice was set free. That was the very first time he had used telepathy in his life. He had never used it before, but he had a feeling that he had used it for sure. Alright, I'll send it over and over until it reaches someone. Natsuhiko kept using telepathy. His 5 senses dampened and he became unaware of the outside world. Eventually, once Natsuhiko was near the limits of his ability to concentrate, he heard someone's voice.
Natsuhiko! Yuri-chan mo!
Natsuhiko snapped back to his senses and looked at the voice's owner.
母さんよかった無事みたいね助けに来たわユリちゃんを連れてすぐに逃げましょう
Natsuhiko whipped his numb body into shape and stood up. The professor carried the limp Yuri and dashed out of the room. They ran through the smoke.
逃げ道はあるの大丈夫第6エリアに非常用の脱出口があるわ2人とも必ず助けるから安心なさい
The professor's voice was seething with determination. The professor ran through what looked like a blazing factory. In the deepest part of the room, there was a security gate. She ran up to it and took a card out of her pocket. She passed the card through the terminal on this side of the gate, and the gate opened. On the other side of the gate was a small room that looked like an elevator hall.
資材用の搬出リフトよ地上から地下へは降りられないけど地下から地上になら事故発生時にも動いてくれるはず
The professor walked up to the control panel and operated it.
お願い動いて
She whispered as if in prayer, and eventually the lift door opened with a heavy sound.
やった助かったわよ
They climbed into the lift. The professor laid Yuri on the floor and closed the door using the control panel. Thank goodness. At the same time, as if threads of tension had been cut, Natsuhiko's consciousness suddenly faded into the distance.
夏彦どうしたの夏彦
Natsuhiko felt like he heard his mother's voice as his consciousness faded. After that, Natsuhiko awoke. Find himself in a hospital bed.